August 22, 1986. A survivor opens their eyes to absolute silence. Across 4 villages, 1,746 people, and thousands of animals lie where they fell. No wounds, no destruction, no explanation. Something had come down from the lake in the dark. Lake Nyos lies hidden in the northwest highlands of Cameroon, far from any city or highway. The lake itself fills a volcanic crater, surrounded by steep green slopes and thick mist that clings to the valley. 4 villages, Nyos, Kam, Cha, and Subam, sat scattered around the lake's edge. Life here moved slowly. Families planted maize and beans in small fields, herded cattle along narrow trails, and cast fishing lines into the cool, deep lake. The only road twisted for hours through the hills before reaching the valley, making the area feel almost cut off from the outside world. In these villages, people relied on each other and on the land. Children fetched water from the lake. Elders shared stories in the evenings, and cattle bells echoed across the hills at dusk. Electricity and telephones were rare. Most news came by word of mouth or not at all. The highland air was clean, the night silent, except for insects and the occasional rumble of distant thunder. This isolation shaped everything. It meant that danger, if it came, could go unnoticed for hours. The land itself seemed stable, unchanged for generations, so when the disaster struck, it felt as if the world had turned upside down. The calm of the valley and the routines of daily life only deepened the sense of unreality in the aftermath. In a place where nothing ever seemed to change, the impossible had happened overnight. 2 years before the silence fell on Lake Nyos, another Cameroonian lake, Manun, unleashed its own quiet disaster. On a night in August 1984, 37 people died without warning near its shore. Witnesses described a sudden, bitter smell and a strange mist, but no fire, no flood, and no sign of violence. The deaths were treated as a local tragedy, a freak event, tragic but isolated. Reports faded, and no one connected Manun's mystery to a wider threat lurking beneath the region's crater lakes. That oversight would leave the villages around Nyos exposed, unprepared for what was coming. The night began with a sound that no one could place, a low, distant rumble rolling out from the lake and echoing through the hills. Some people thought it was thunder or rocks shifting on the slopes. Others noticed a strange, bitter smell drifting on the air, sharp enough to wake the senses but impossible to name. Then, as darkness settled, silence took over. No dogs barking, no cattle lowing, not even the usual insects. An invisible cloud slipped from the water's edge, hugging the ground as it moved through the valley. It crept through Nyos first, then Kam, Cha, and Subam, traveling nearly 25 kilometers in the night. Where the cloud passed, people and animals collapsed where they stood or slept. By sunrise, 1,746 people were dead. More than 3,000 cattle, goats, and sheep lay motionless beside them. 1.6 million tons of gas had moved unseen, leaving behind a valley emptied of life, with no fire, no flood, and no warning. The first rescuers stepped into a world that made no sense. Bodies lay untouched, as if asleep, scattered beside animals that had simply fallen where they grazed. There were no burns, no collapsed walls, not even a scorched blade of grass. The houses stood, food sat uneaten, and water buckets waited by doors. Faced with so much death but no visible cause, officials and villagers reached for any explanation that might fit. Some whispered of poison or chemical attack, others blamed a secret weapon or a curse. Volcanic eruption was suggested, but there was no ash, no fire, no crater, nothing to match the scale of loss. Rumors of an evil wind, a supernatural force, spread quickly. Every theory clashed with the evidence in front of them. The one thing everyone agreed on: whatever had happened here, it left no trace but silence. International scientists stepped into the valley and found the lake transformed. The water, once clear and blue, now glowed a dull reddish-brown. On the shore, grass and shrubs lay pressed flat, as if something heavy had rolled over them. Patterns began to appear. The few survivors had all been on higher ground, above an invisible line. Investigators collected water samples from the surface down to the lake's deepest points, searching for any sign of poison or volcanic activity. Gas tests and temperature readings mapped out the lake's hidden layers. Each clue pointed back to the water itself, a crime scene with secrets buried deep below the surface. Deep beneath the calm surface, Lake Nyos was hiding a secret. For years, volcanic gas seeped up from underground and dissolved into the cold, heavy water at the lake's bottom. Pressure from the weight of all that water kept the gas trapped, like a bottle of soda left unopened. But the system was unstable. When something disturbed the lake, perhaps a landslide or a shift in the earth, the pressure dropped. Suddenly, the gas rushed out all at once, just as fizz explodes from a shaken bottle when the cap is twisted off. The cloud that formed was made of carbon dioxide, heavier than air, and it rolled silently down the valleys, pushing oxygen aside and leaving nothing to breathe. No one simply went home after Lake Nyos. Survivors found themselves gathered in resettlement camps, sometimes more than 20 kilometers away, surrounded by strangers and memories they could not leave behind. The valleys where families once worked the land grew silent, not just from the loss of voices, but from the emptiness that followed. Houses stood abandoned, fields overgrown, and the rhythms of daily life were broken. Some survivors, like Joseph Nkwane, spoke years later of waking up in a new place, with old routines gone and neighbors scattered. The trauma did not fade with time. Children grew up hearing stories of the night the air itself turned deadly, and elders mourned the loss of entire lineages. Even decades later, the cost is measured not only in lives lost, but in the fractures left behind. Lake Nyos is now managed with care. After the disaster, engineers and scientists installed tall pipes to vent gas from the lake's depths, starting in 2001 and expanding the system over time. This steady release keeps the water from turning deadly again. Yet, the natural dam remains a concern. Made of old volcanic rock, it is cracked and worn by rain and time, watched for any sign of failure that could send water and gas downstream. Elsewhere, Lake Kivu holds even more gas and sits beside nearly 2 million people. Scientists apply lessons from Nyos to monitor Kivu, guide early warning systems, and develop safe extraction projects. The story of Nyos has become a policy lesson. Hidden hazards in the landscape demand constant attention and early recognition. Only through ongoing vigilance can such risks be managed. Even now, lakes like Nyos hold silent dangers beneath calm surfaces. As populations grow near these waters, the unseen risk remains. Nature keeps its secrets, and not all have been revealed. Share your thoughts below.